Hi, I'm Brant Huddleston, host of this Go Mobile Moment and author of the book How to Build the Perfect Smartphone Tour Without Geeking Out. Does anybody remember these little guys? I didn't think so. I'm going to tell you about him later, but first I want to give you 3 tips on how you can build the perfect smartphone tour.
This Go Mobile Moment is brought to you by Effortix. Effortix is a framework for creating state-of-the-art mobile tours. It's the one I use. I like it. It's fast, it's easy, it's not expensive, and I think you'll like it too. Check it out at effortix.com.
So our story begins with a trip to one of the most popular local tourist sites right here in my own city of Richmond, Virginia. I was with a friend and we wanted to take a tour, but none of the tours were scheduled that day. So we went down to the gift shop and we talked to a couple of nice ladies there and said, "Hey, do you have a self-guided tour?" "Sure we do," they said, and they handed us this thing. And that's not bad. I mean, paper's okay. I like paper. It's fast, it's cheap, it's easy. And on the back, they had some information we could read that took us to the different points of interest. And you'll notice it had these little guys on there, these QR codes. We'll talk about those in a minute. So you scan the code and you have a mobile tour, apparently.
The first challenge here is that for the tourist to get any value out of this paper map, they're going to need a third-party application called a QR scanner. There's thousands of them. I happen to have one on my phone, but that's a real obstacle if you're unfamiliar with the applications or you don't want to take the time to download one while the kids are screaming and you're really wanting to just go on a tour. It's important to note that a QR scanner app is not part of your mobile tourism app. It's actually a gateway or a tool that you need in order to just be able to access the mobile tourism app. I personally don't think most people would put up with this. I do because I'm curious, but I think most folks would have given up a long time ago and just chucked the whole thing and said, come on, let's get going and use the paper or do something different. Of course, it helps that after you've gone through all this effort, the app actually works, which as you can see here, it didn't. So tip number 1 is to make your app fast and make it easy, and I might add, make it work, and people will use it and they'll love you for it. Otherwise, you'll have just wasted your time and money. Our second tip has its roots with this guy who is the professional tour guide for a tourism site, and he is telling the stories about this fantastic place, but unfortunately all those folks out yonder might be having a bit of a problem that you can probably guess from looking at this picture. So what you're seeing here is a lack of access. Some of these people can't hear him. Some of them may not speak English. Others don't have the time to stay. His particular presentation involved pointing out points of interest, as you can see in the picture, that were in various spots around the yard, and it was very difficult to know exactly what he was pointing to. So for lots of reasons, this guy, with all of his wisdom and knowledge, was crippled. He wasn't able to fully communicate his stories in a way that was effective for his audience. Tip number 2 is to expand the reach of your storytellers. Now, this guy we just saw simply needed a microphone and a PA system to reach his audience. But I think he also could have had his story captured in a really nice smartphone tour like the one you see here. His stories, his perspective, his knowledge, his wisdom would all be captured here in a way that people could use anytime, anywhere, regardless of whether he's there or not. They can listen to it in different languages, they can access maps, they can navigate around your tourism site and look at different points of interest and really dig in deeper than the professional would probably want to take the time to go into. That's a good example of how to expand the reach of your storytellers. Our Go Mobile tip number 2.
So why am I wearing shades? Well, because our story continues at the beach. Come on, let's go. I'm here in Virginia Beach, Virginia, one of the top tourist sites along the East Coast where people come for beautiful surf and sand. And of course, something caught my eye, and it's this thing, which is a little kiosk that has a QR code on it. In fact, it has 2 of them. You'll see this type here, and then you'll see this other one down here. I was curious, but at the time I didn't have my smartphone, so I walked over to yonder tourist kiosk and talked to the two people inside, neither of whom had even ever heard that these things existed. The man, who was in his 40s, was totally bored by the idea, but the young woman, who might have been 20, said, "Let's go take a look." So we walked over here, and she asked, "What is it?" I said, "Well, you need to have a scanner first." So we downloaded a scanner, and she tried it. It was horrible. I mean, it was just the most painful experience to finally pull up a lame YouTube video of this marine science museum. And I asked her, "Would you actually try to find the museum that way?" "Never," she said. "I would just flip my phone over to what's nearby, and there would be the museum, and that's how I would do it." So you look around at all these people enjoying Virginia Beach and ask yourself, how many of them are likely to use any one of the dozens of these little QR kiosks along the boardwalk? And the answer is pretty much nobody.
Now, I don't want you to get the wrong idea about QR codes. I think they have their place. As you can see in this brochure, there are QR codes associated with the advertisements, and that makes sense because the brochure travels, it goes to your hotel room, it goes in the car, it moves around. So that QR code is linked to that particular ad, and it moves with the ad wherever the ad goes. That's very different than a stationary object, a statue, a museum, something that's fixed on the earth. There's another way to link to that, and that's through GPS. So tip number 3 is to use the right technology the right way. QR codes make sense one place and not in another. The same is true of GPS technology, of course. You would never use that in a brochure unless your ad was, say, carved on the side of the pyramids, which I'm guessing it's probably not.
So I promised to tell you what this little guy is. He's actually a Sony mini disc, not to be mistaken for his bigger brother, which is the ones we're familiar with. This is Abbey Road by the Beatles, by the way, an excellent record, and I'm going to keep this. But for the mini discs, hey, I don't even have a player for that anymore. So the final lesson is don't paint yourself into a technology corner and find out that your content, something as great as this record, is locked up in something people can't get to anymore. Stay nimble, stay open, and go with the times because technology is changing really fast and you need to change too. All right, there you have it, folks. 3 tips for how to build the perfect smartphone tour. If you want to know more, you'll want to get my book, How to Build the Perfect Smartphone Tour Without Geeking Out. It's a non-technical guide for professionals in the tourism industry, and it's available free from the website address below. Of course, I'm available to help you if you want it. You can get in touch with me by writing to brant@danbra.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and until then, folks, I'll see you on the road.